So this is going to be my third and possibly final analysis of Doomsday Clock. I finally finished reading it again, all 12 issues, um, looking for trying to answer specific questions. The first question, and I thought the most important question, was who was behind the Superman theory? That is the theory that uh, villains and heroes were being created rather than arising spontaneously. And I guess my answer is it doesn't matter. I thought this was a crucial plot point. Apparently, it's not. I was wrong. Um, it was a conspiracy theory that turned out to have quite a bit of truth to it. And I guess that's all that matters. That I take it there was no nefarious plot behind it. It's just somebody discovered it and released that information, and so it was causing all sorts of issues. In my previous um, video, I mentioned that Rorschach number 2 had sent a thumb drive to Lois showing videos of the Justice Society that had been removed from the timeline, and I was wondering how in the world he could have gotten this. Well, it was apparently not Lex Luthor. So here's Rorschach without his mask on, and here is it being put into the mailbox. That would have been the thumb drive, except apparently that wasn't Rorschach who did it. That was Lex Luthor. So the question is, how did Lex Luthor get that information? And I guess, there's a lot of lazy writing in here by Jeff Johns. And I guess the answer is, well, he's Lex Luthor. He just can do stuff like that. So I don't know how he could get a video of a superhero team that didn't exist anymore. But I guess that's it. It's Lex Luthor. My other question is, why was Dr. Manhattan manipulating reality? And I'll get into that in just a moment. So what I have here, this is a scene where Firestorm and Superman are in Russia. There's an explosion, and who is behind the explosion? Well, it was Ozymandias, and Bubastis somehow did it. Now, Bubastis is right there. So I guess he can do explosions from, I don't know, wherever Ozymandias is at, because later he says Bubastis did it. He did it. It was sort of a similar plot to Watchmen, which is Bubastis was able to duplicate the powers of Dr. Manhattan. So it led the superheroes of the DCU, pointed them towards Dr. Manhattan. So after that, let's see. Basically, Dr. Manhattan, why was he doing what he was doing? I guess he was just playing around. He was fascinated by Superman and was sitting there and retconning his origin over and over again. So, of course, we've had reboots many times with Superman. And so I don't know if Dr. Manhattan was somehow able to recognize the editorial decisions of DC, and or if he was literally the one. In some ways, he was manipulating reality. In other ways, it seemed like he was simply observing it. And this is the first time I'd heard the term metaverse used in DCU. And I guess the metaverse versus the multiverse is kind of the malleability of reality, I guess. So, for instance, Superman would make his first appearance in 1938. And then when DC decided, oh, we can't have Superman having first appeared in 1938 because he'd be ancient or possibly dead, so they created Earth 1 and Earth 2, but then they just started retconning, just retroactive continuity, so that his origin kept getting pushed forward, and Dr. Manhattan was able to perceive this. But he was also playing around with reality. And so I don't really understand where the cutoff was. whether he was just perceiving it or manipulating it. Um, he at one point says he did it out of quote cold curiosity, so he was just analyzing it for no good reason, um, just curiosity. Uh, so he was convinced that there was going to be a conflict between him and Superman, and that he couldn't see the future afterwards. So either Superman was going to destroy him, or he was going to destroy the metaverse. Okay, so there's I had this theory that Ozymandias had gone back in time and started the Superman theory. I don't believe that's the case now. I changed my mind. So here is where he says, it was just one line. He says, um, he's talking to Saturn Girl. He gathered Marionette and Mime, and once I re engineered Night Owl's ship, I guess this would be Saturn Girl, you turned it into a time sphere. Now I was like, well, when did he ever go through time? Um, well, I guess that what the events in the Watchmen universe that were happening when Doctor Manhattan went forward or went to the main DCU was taking place in the early '90s, not in the current time. So I guess that he was able to follow. Now, I think that's kind of silly because the Watchmen universe was more grounded in reality, and for Ozymandias just to create a time machine seemed inconsistent with the universe that Alan Moore created. Uh, Extraordinarily convenient. That I mean, Ozymandias was supposed to be highly intelligent, but I'll just turn it into a time machine. Okay, seems unlikely. Um, so I think my biggest issue, well, a few issues I have, some big issues I have with this series. Uh, I think that Jeff Johns, I don't think he liked Watchmen because the way he treats it is, I think, shameful. He has both Lois and Lex making fun of, mocking Ozymandias' plan. And I've always felt that the strength of Watchmen was the ambiguity, not only of the ending, but of whether Ozymandias was a hero or a villain. Because he did kill millions. Um, but he was doing it in what he believed was a greater cause, that he was sacrificing millions to save the entire planet. And given that he was consistently um, shown as, or said that he was the smartest man on the planet, would it be inconceivable that he was correct? So there was, and I think Jeff Johns did not like that because this is just my theory, because he basically he made Ozymandias just a flat out villain. In this series, he's a villain. And so he also removed the ambiguity of the ending. And Ozymandias' plan completely failed because it was discovered what he had done. So he's now made to look foolish and villainous. So I know that in the DC universe, and comics in general, they have a code against killing. So you see that with Batman all the time. Batman will never kill the Joker because if he starts killing one, then where does it stop? But this is a fantasy. I mean, the if let's say Jeffrey Dahmer was put in prison, and which he was, but he got out and started doing his thing again, and they locked him up again, and he got out and kept doing it over and over again. Well, you got to kill him. I mean, probably on the second time. Um, and to allow the Joker over and over again. And the reason that DC has this, it's not because they hate killing so much. It's because they want to reuse these characters. If you kill the Joker, or even if you just put him in prison and he's in there, you given a life sentence, well, you can't use the character anymore. So they came up with this idea of no killing. But that was not Watchmen universe. Watchmen universe was different. And so at least in the ending, when Ozymandias' plan went through, he put that monster into New York and killed a bunch of people. Dr. Manhattan killed Rorschach to protect the secret. So that tells me that Dr. Manhattan at least believed that what was done, and he had to protect what Ozymandias did. So he at least had some belief that Ozymandias might have done the right thing. And he never did anything to Ozymandias. I mean, it might have been better for him to just kill Ozymandias and wipe out everything else just to make sure the secret was kept. But he didn't. And he left the universe. I also don't think that Alan Moore intended for Dr. Manhattan to be this powerful. He was powerful. I don't think he was meant to be far more powerful than the entire DC universe. And at one point, at the end, we get just one quick sentence where it says that all of the nuclear bombs, because that was the problem in the Watchmen universe. There were nuclear bombs getting launched left and right. I don't know why the world wasn't blown up. So it says, who else could have made every nuclear weapon on Earth disappear? Well, there's a problem with that, a major problem, which is if Dr. Manhattan can make all the nuclear bombs disappear at will, why didn't he just do that in Watchmen? Why sit there and go through all of the things that he was going through? He recognized the problem, and that's why he was working with Ozymandias. So why not just get rid of them if he could do that? I just don't think that Alan Moore meant for him to be that powerful. And so it really feels like in this way he was really stepping on Alan Moore. And it was almost like a thumb in Alan Moore's face, because he's basically saying, no, there was no moral ambiguity. Ozymandias was wrong. He never should have done that. And so, and to sit there and make fun of the plot, I happen to think Watchmen is the greatest comic series ever. And I think the plot was probably the greatest plot ever for a comic series. And his plan was both very complicated, but very easy to understand and explain at the same time. And so to make fun of it, it just seems like he really didn't agree with Alan Moore. And if you want to sit there and do an interview and say, I don't like that, but to write a whole story that's in continuity, that's basically saying, no, I didn't like Watchmen. And if he feels different, he's like, no, I really like Watchmen. I just did a terrible job of carrying on Alan Moore's legacy, because I'll bet you Alan Moore would hate this series. And I mean, he pretty much hates everything that when people are touching his creations. But in this particular one, I thought it was, Rorschach, which was written by Tom King. I think one of the things that was really good about it was that although it took place in the Watchmen universe, he didn't step on Alan Moore's toes at all. He made no changes. In fact, the story conflicts with what's in here, which gives me the impression that one of them is out of continuity, and probably Rorschach. So basically, in the end, Dr. Manhattan is inspired by Superman and undoes all of the things he did. And everyone has a happy ending. And we have this child of marionette and mime with the Dr. Manhattan's symbol on his forehead. And so I guess he's supposed to be um, have taken all of Dr. Manhattan's powers. And so John is Dr. Manhattan. I don't know if anything ever happened with this character. This is one of the things Jeff Johns creates ideas, but sometimes they don't get used. Same thing with Grant Morrison. Um, more and more I read this sort story, the less I like it. I'll be honest. A lot of stories, the more I read them, the more I like it. But this one, I just really think is insulting to Alan Moore and to Watchmen in general because it is a 180-degree difference from what Alan Moore was trying to say. And boy, if you're gonna use the Watchmen characters, I just think you should be more respectful. Ozymandias was just treated horribly in this, not just because he was a villain, but he also was made to look stupid quite a bit. And so that was a problem. I don't even understand what his plan was. He wanted to create a conflict between Superman and Dr. Manhattan. For what purpose? Because he thought Superman would save everyone? I don't know. It didn't make any sense. Anyway, this is my third and I would say final look at Doomsday Clock, and this is the Absolute Edition.